Hi, hello, welcome back. My name is Kim. This is Kim Reads and Reviews, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I had read in April. So the order of which I'm going to be talking about the books today is by genre, and then within those genres, the lowest rated and to the highest rated. Starting with mysteries and thrillers, the very last book that I read in April was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, and I gave this 2.75 stars. This is not my first Lisa Jewell that I have read, which I will get to in a couple of minutes, but essentially within this one we follow two women, Alex and Josie. Alex has a very successful podcast. Josie works as a seamstress, I believe it was, and they both have a husband and a couple of kids and pets, and they both have the same birthday actually in common, which is how they encounter each other. They're both out at the same pub celebrating their 45th birthday. Immediately, Josie kind of becomes really fixated on Alex because Alex kind of seems to have it all from her perspective. Alex has, like I mentioned, a very successful podcast where she interviews women who are successful. Josie encounters Alex again after she listens to every single one of her podcast episodes and tells Alex, "You need to interview me on your podcast. My life is about to change. I'm ready to tell my story." Like, she's being all cryptic about it. And so Alex can feel that Josie is kind of fixated on her, but she still decides that this is a great idea to invite this woman to her home and begin interviewing her on her podcast. And she's kind of thinking like, okay, if this doesn't work out, then I'll just say creative differences and it's just not working and we'll part ways, kind of a thing. As Alex interviews Josie, she kind of discovers a little bit more and more about Josie's life and how she kind of came to be, how her and her husband met, the situation with her two kids. She's estranged from both of them, but one of them doesn't eat any solid foods. Her husband she met when she was like 13. They married when she was 15 and he's like 45. So there's that kind of content within this book, which I have not heard anybody talk about. So, reader beware kind of a thing. So like I mentioned, this is not my first Lisa Jewell. I have read a variety of her backlist items, and I can't remember which book it was that I read last before None of This Is True from her. But after I read that, I just kind of said like, hey, Lucy, I'm not reading any more Lisa Jewell. Her books just don't work for me. They're not bad books. They're very well written. She does a great job at building tension and just this ominous tone. And her characters as well are very fleshed out. Like, they feel very individual from one another. They're full-fledged. Like, they each have a distinct voice and distinct personality where, a lot of their actions make sense in the book and what they're saying makes sense. But every time I finish one of her books, I just have this same feeling, like there's just this buildup of tension and like ominous tone, and then the ending is just very like flatline. For books that are mysteries or thriller type novels, I kind of expect an ending that doesn't like, totally shock me or knock me off my feet, but just something that's a little bit like, oh, I didn't expect that sort of a thing. And they always just kind of end up being the most obvious ending. Every time I finish one of her books, I'm just kind of disappointed in them. Again, not to say they're bad books, and if, people like them, then I can understand why, but for a book that gained so much hype last year and everybody was kind of saying that it was very twisty and all these things, like, I would have to disagree, honestly. Like, Josie's life is weird and kind of odd, and the more Alex sparses out of her and just kind of learns more about her, the more weird it kind of becomes. And that tension or my intrigue in how this was all going to develop was definitely there. Like, I was intrigued. I didn't want to put it down. I was reading it pretty quickly, and then when I got to the end, I was like, not again. I think I'm just gonna part ways with Lisa Jewell for now. So anyways, so the other thriller that I had read this month is a true thriller, and that is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I gave this 4 stars. Riley Sager is super hit or miss for me these days, and every time I pick up one of his books, I don't know if I'm going to end up DNFing it or if I'm going to really enjoy it, and I like that experience of reading his books, just like never really knowing. But essentially within this one, we follow Kit as she moves to Hope's End to be a healthcare aide for Lenora Hope. And Lenora Hope had various strokes throughout her life, and now she is mute. She can communicate with one hand, and there's this kind of like Lizzie, I think it was Lizzie Borden, type history to her where allegedly she had killed her entire family. And as Kit starts taking care of her, Lenora uses a typewriter to communicate and says like, I want to tell you the whole story. And Kit knows Lenora's history. Like it's a town, what's it called? Like there's a town nursery rhyme that kind of came to be because of Lenora Hope's Hand's history and the family tragedy that happened there. And so of course she's like, I want to know what actually happened, because she's kind of spooked. She's like, this woman who is mute, like she can't move except for her one hand, allegedly killed her whole family. And so it's kind of also the setting and the backdrop of it is very gothic. It's on like a cliff's edge, and it's this like dark, dusty mansion. The chapters are interchangeable where you get Kit's perspective, but then you also get Lenora Hope's typewritten or letters that she did on the typewriter explaining the history of what happened that night with her family. I loved the setting of this novel. I liked that the manor was set up on this like cliffside edge. The manor is literally falling apart and is decrepit and could split at any point and fall into the ocean. Like there's pieces of this cliff that are just, you know, they are not safe to be on, and so it's not safe to be in this house. In any moment it could fall apart. Like there's the stairwell that Kit keeps walking through, and there's this giant crack in the wall of the stairwell because the house is splitting. It's like falling apart, and there's this tilt on the side of the house where Kit and Lenora Hope stay. I just loved the way that Riley Sager had painted the setting in this book. It just, the state of the house also added to the tension and kind of like urgency of what was going on in the book. It was just all very well done. I really, really liked it. I liked the way it ended. That very last chapter, that was a great one. So next I'm going to talk about my literary contemporary fiction type books that I read this month. First one being These Violent Delights by Micah Nevermere. I give this 2.75 stars. In this one we meet Paul and Julian, and those two meet while at school, I think on university campus together in a class. And when they meet, so begins this like complex toxic relationship between the two of them. And I think that that's really all you need to know going into this. The writing in this was impeccable. There were so many things that I had highlighted in here. I just went in with the wrong expectations. It's really like a literary fiction kind of book more so than a horror. The prologue in this is probably my favorite prologue I have ever read. It hooked me right away. If that prologue was not in there, I would have stopped reading this within the first 5 chapters. I won't lie. And because of that prologue, I wanted more of it when I started reading it. I was patiently waiting to get back to that point in the prologue, and I got about 70% in, and I was like, I don't think we're ever getting back to the prologue. Like that, the vibes of what the prologue was, and you know, the setting, like it was just very dark and like gritty, and I was like, yes, like this is what I'm looking for in, you know, this book. And the relationship between Paul and Julian was very interesting to read about. And the way that Micah Nevermere wrote these two characters was incredible. It was so good. I really liked it. It was just, I was waiting for something and I just wasn't getting it. I probably will return to it at some point when I'm in the mood to read something like this. But yeah, I was just growing very impatient with it, and I was looking for something a little bit more plot focused than character focused at this point in my reading in the past month. So I put that down and just kind of picked something else up where I was like, I know I'm going to get some plot. I think I ended up reading The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and I kind of got that plot driven book that I was looking for after that. So the next one is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. This was 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. When I finished it, I actually gave it like 4.5 or 4.75, but then when I was prepping for this video, I was like, oh man, this is a 5-star for sure. Within this one, we follow Gilda, and you learn in the synopsis that she is an atheist, animal-loving lesbian, and she accidentally lands herself a job at a local church. How this happens is she is rummaging around her flat and she finds this flyer and it says like, do you need someone to talk to? Come to this address. And there's no indication that it's at this church on the pamphlet. And she needs someone to talk to. She's kind of mentally going through it in her life at the moment. She's extremely depressed. She's very anxious. She has these panic attacks. Like, she's not having a good time. She goes to this address that's indicated on the pamphlet, discovers that it's a church. Nobody really asks her why she's there. The Father Jeff just assumes that she's the new receptionist and she just undertakes the role without without correcting anybody. But overall, the tone of this is very, just, you feel for Gilda. It's very sad. The way that this was written at one point to really kind of emphasize mentally where she was at was just so well done. You know, the way she just it's a character who so deeply cares for everybody around her and everything that around her, like even the neighbor's cat, and like she thinks about this bunny she had when she was a kid, and she just cares so deeply that it hurts her like so much. And it's just so heartwarming in some ways, and the ending was just so perfect. It made me teary-eyed, and like thinking about it just literally makes my heart warm. Emily Austin's writing was just so good. I can't wait to eventually read her other book that just came out. But it was just very deadpan at some points and sad, and just overall just so well written. I absolutely loved it. I really felt like all the emotions reading this. It was happy with some funny points, really sad with other points, and just kind of like tense as well. And oh my goodness, following along with Gilda was a really great experience, and I can't wait to reread this in the future and just tab it like crazy. Okay, so we're in the home stretch. We're going to talk about romances. I gave both these romances the exact same rating of 3.5. First one being Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. This is the third book in the Twisted Love series. I'm making pretty good headway on it. My library didn't have the audiobook for the very last book, the fourth one in the series, so I'm just kind of waiting for that to come out. Within this one, we follow Josh and Jules, and they really don't like one another, but they work relatively closely. I think Jules is studying to become a lawyer. Josh is a doctor at the hospital. I can't remember the reason why they end up working together, but they do. And they strike up a friendship, and they also additionally strike up a bit of a truce because they're both very physically attracted to one another. And so they say, okay, like, let's just do something like no strings attached. Let's do friends with benefits. This will be fun. You know, we can blow off steam. And so they do. But then, of course, they end up building feelings for one another. I would say that Anna Huang books get better as you go in the series. I'm enjoying this one even more than the second one. I enjoyed the second one more than the first one. So I have high hopes for the fourth book in the series. So we'll see how that goes. And then the last romance I'm going to talk about is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This was a fun time. This one we follow Anastasia, who's a figure skater, and Nate, who is a hockey player. Essentially, they have two rinks on their campus. One the figure skaters use, the other one's the hockey players use. The hockey players' rink gets trashed because of some competing team and someone did something. Anyway, so then the hockey players have to use the figure skaters' rink for the time being. And Anastasia, who is a figure skater, is not happy about this situation at all. She has competitions coming up, and so now she has to adjust her whole schedule, share a rink with an entire hockey team. And, you know, she's very frustrated because of these boys. You know, she can't practice as much as she wants, and you know, they're taking up her ice time and all these things. And Nathan is the captain of this hockey team, so he takes it upon himself to try and befriend Anastasia, because he's like, I'm just trying to make this as smooth as possible for both of us. And you know, he recognizes that it was the hockey team's fault for what had happened, and you know, to try and make everyone's lives easier, he's trying to get into her good graces. It's already kind of like a grumpy sunshine trope, if that's something you're into. Eventually, Anastasia's skating partner gets hurt, and so Nathan takes, I don't want to spoil anything, but he ends up not playing hockey for a bit, and he offers Anastasia to help her kind of continue to practice in a partner format. And he's like, I just have to lift you, and you know, I can help you practice still. You know, you won't lose any practice time or anything like that. So they end up practicing with one another, and they develop this very nice and wholesome friendship and relationship eventually. I liked the way that this had ended. The challenge posed to their relationship, as there is always one in every romance, was kind of like, it was okay. I didn't really care for it all that much, but I really enjoyed this book. Actually, it was a really fun time, and I'm interested in picking up her other book, which I think is Wildfire. So I've added that to my TBR and I'm looking forward to it. This cover of Icebreaker makes it appear as though it is YA. This is not YA, like at all. I brought the book home and my friend had saw it and my partner both did, and they both just kind of assumed it was a YA novel. And I was like, this is not YA, this is extremely spicy. So, you know, don't let the cover fool you. I do think they should change the covers of these books because they do give, you know, an aura of like innocence and just kind of fun and lighthearted. The only reason I knew it was spicy was because I think I saw something on Instagram or something like that about how spicy the book was, and yeah, so that's the only reason that I knew that that was the case. But okay, so that is all the books that I had read in April. It was an interesting month where I had kind of discovered that I am really craving plot-driven books lately. So books like Icebreaker, None of This Is True, The Only One Left, what was another plot book? Anyways, those were really good for my reading and like keeping my attention this month. So I think I'll continue that into May. I put a bunch of thrillers on hold at my library, and I'm gonna go pick those up this afternoon that I'm really excited to read. I'm hoping to also just kind of get back into my thriller reading. So we'll see how May goes. Cross your fingers for me. But anyways, thank you so much for hanging out for a little bit, and I hope you're enjoying what you're reading, and I'll see you in the next video. I sit cross-legged and it like hurts eventually to sit cross-legged. Tell me you're older than 30 without telling me you're older than 30. Oh man, like I love spring, but my allergies are just acting up like crazy. I don't know if anybody else is, but like snow mold really like makes me congested and like nasally and nose runny. So yeah, I'm suffering over here. And my cats are shedding like crazy when the weather changes. So that's just additionally another like attack on my my nose and my breathing.